Britain's West Coast Main Line is one of the busiest mixed traffic railways in Europe. South of Preston, its largely four-track route is extremely busy, with local, regional, intercity and freight trains all passing through some of the most popular city regions in the country. The halfway point between London and Glasgow is Preston, north of which the line is predominantly a two-track railway, passing through sparsely populated and stunning lakeland scenery and the dramatic Scottish borders north of Carlisle. Between Preston and Carlisle, such is the challenge of the terrain, the railway and the M6 motorway run side by side for most of the way. And in January 2026, a major 2-week blockade affecting both railway and road during works on Clifton Bridge over the M6 near Penrith has caused much head scratching. Easy, say many. Simply divert trains over the Settle Carlisle line, the Victorian marvel that stands head and shoulders as England's most spectacularly scenic railway. And it is true that in times past, British Rail and even Virgin regularly used the line as a diversionary route during similar blockades. But it is not straightforward. British Rail tended to operate locomotive-hauled coaching stock that could be pulled by a variety of locomotives, electric or diesel. The Avanti West Coast fleet on today's Anglo-Scottish services are the hugely successful Pendolinos. But as we were reminded recently, they're not as quick to couple up to a diesel locomotive as British Rail would have been able to do in the past. And in fairness to Avanti West Coast, you can only play the hand you are dealt. But behind the scenes, Avanti West Coast, Network Rail and a large group of operators, including LNER, TransPennine, CrossCountry, ScotRail and Northern, have all been working to come up with a plan to keep people on trains during the blockade, using Avanti's new ACE card, the electric and diesel Class 805 Evero. Problem is, will the diversion over the Settle Carlisle line work as seamlessly as it needs to? Well, the only way to find out is the old-fashioned way of running a test train. And so on Wednesday 20th of August, Green Signals was one of an extremely select group invited along.
So I've come here to Stafford Station to catch a train to see whether in 2025 it can still be done.
Only problem is that on the day of our trip, a major cable theft had knocked out a great deal of the signalling between Warrington and Wigan. Would our test train have to be aborted before it even began?
Okay, first bit of good news. The Evero set is here at Stafford, so we're going to jump on board and head north, hoping that by the time we get to Warrington, we'll be able to get through. So let's get on board and start the trip.
This is my first proper run out on one of the Evero sets, and I do like them. The seats are more comfortable than on an LNER Zoomer or the GWR IEP sets, and the performance is smooth. It's quiet too, although we are of course on electric power as we leave Stafford. At Crewe, we pass LSL's depot and grab a glimpse of Anglo-Scottish locomotives of the past, with a Class 86 and 87 on shed, along with the unique Class 89. We have a brief stop at Preston, because it's here we switch over to diesel power. We will leave the station heading south, retracing our steps for a short while, before quickly turning right at Farringdon Curve Junction, and then immediately passing back over the West Coast Main Line to head towards Blackburn on the East Lancs line. It's not often I come back to Preston, but this is where, as a young lad of 10 or 11, I spent many hours train spotting, watching the trains of a very different era arrive and depart. Ironically, this is the exact same spot where my co-presenter on Green Signals, Nigel Harris, did the exact same thing just a few years prior to me. Quite the coincidence. We leave Preston, cross the River Ribble, and we're soon on the line heading towards Blackburn.
So we've left Preston, we've just gone through Bamber Bridge. This is a real trip down memory lane for me. This is a line from Preston to Blackburn. But when I was a kid at school in Blackburn, I used to travel on very regularly, and it's very interesting, very sort of novel in a way to see an Evero set going down here, which of course it will do if the diversion via the Settle Carlisle comes about.
Avanti West Coast had plenty of invited guests on the train, so had thoughtfully brought along an on-train catering team.
Just a coffee, please, yeah. Fabulous, thank you very much. Just coming into Blackburn, where I used to go to school back in the 80s. It is remarkable how different this station is now to what it was when I was a kid. And I have to say, not for the better.
We turned left at Daisyfield Junction and were soon passing through the eastern flank of Blackburn, before crossing Worley Viaduct with its abbey nearby. North of Clitheroe, we see the mighty Pendle Hill of Pendle Witches fame.
We're just approaching Hellifield now. The gentle scenery of the Forest of Bowland is starting to give way to the more dramatic scenery of the limestone areas of around Malham, and I can just in the distance see Pennygent.
As we start to climb away from Settle Junction, Andy Mellors, Managing Director of Avanti West Coast, introduces us to some of his colleagues who explain some of the detail of what is planned in January, and I get an exclusive opportunity to chat to Andy one-on-one.
So in the first 2 weeks of January, there's engineering work taking place on the West Coast Main Line, principally in the Penrith area where a bridge over the M6 is being replaced. So during those 2 weeks, it won't be possible to run direct trains on the West Coast Main Line to and from Scotland. And indeed, for 6 of those 14 days, Network Rail are also going to be undertaking other engineering work north of Carlisle and also in the Preston station area. So today is really about demonstrating the plans that we're working up to run a shuttle service using our Class 805 Evero trains from Preston to Carlisle via the Settle and Carlisle line to keep customers on trains as much as possible during that period of engineering work.
Soon we approach Ribblehead and its famous viaduct, spectacular in its own right, of course, although equally totemic in the fight to save the line from closure in the 1980s, when British Rail attempted to prove the viaduct was uneconomic to repair, and the campaigners proved they were wrong. We travel slowly over the viaduct to take in the marvellous views of Batty Moss, and to enable the drone above us to capture that all-important money shot. Past Bleemore signal box, the most isolated in England. After Bleemore Tunnel, we soon pass through Dent Station, the highest railway station in England at 1,150 feet, or 350 metres above sea level, with the most dramatic views down the lush green of Dentdale. Then it's the run over the windswept moors to Garsdale and the former junction with the branch to Hawes and Northallerton, before reaching Ace Gill Summit at 1,169 feet above sea level, the high point on the entire railway network in England. Of course, exercises such as these cost money over and above the normal operating cost of running a railway. So I ask Andy, who's paying?
Now, one of the challenges, of course, things that this is the cost of doing this. And if it's requiring support, is this something that, I suppose the Department of Transport have looked at and said, no, actually, it is a good thing to keep people on trains, even though it's going to cost us a bit in the short term.
So the transport focus research previously has, really illustrated the importance of keeping customers on trains as much as possible, and that's none more so than in that bank holiday period after the Christmas closure, and customers that might not be using rail particularly frequently, making those journeys back home, and quite often having presents and large amounts of luggage with them. So there is a real benefit of keeping passengers on trains.
During the blockade, it will take up to 7 Everos to run this diversionary shuttle service. That is to enable a broadly 2-hourly timetable of trains between Preston and Carlisle, which will take around 2.5 hours for a trip that would ordinarily take about 1 hour and 10 minutes. Still, 7 Everos is a sizable commitment, and since I know Avanti West Coast don't have spare sets just lying around idle, I ask Andy who is going to find their service somewhat depleted as a result.
So during the 14 days of the blockade at Penrith, there are the first 4 days of that where actually there's engineering work happening at Hanslope Junction, north of Milton Keynes. So that is going to limit the number of trains that we can run anyway, so we can actually free up our Evero fleet to run these Settle and Carlisle diversions without any additional impact on services operating elsewhere. But during the remaining 10 days, we will have to make a small number of alterations, principally to our Chester services, in order to free up trains. But on our North Wales services, we still envisage being able to operate the same quantum of services in that period.
Excellent.
We arrive into Appleby, where we have a brief stop and a chance to stretch our legs. The sight of this train certainly draws both curious and admiring glances. The opportunity is being taken to check train lengths and platform clearances, no doubt. And I get the chance for a shot of the lovely juxtaposition of a brand new Class 805 Evero train underneath bracketed London Midland semaphore signals. Appleby is the county town of the historic county of Westmoreland, and with a population of around 3,000, it's a sizable community. It's the kind of place that could so easily have lost its rail service during the beaching cuts, and indeed British Rail's ill-fated, from their point of view, attempt to close it in the 1980s. What I especially like is the fact that so many of the original Midland Railway features have been retained here, without it compromising at all any of the functionality of the station. Back on the train for the run to Carlisle, and I'm reminded that this diversionary service will actually be a shuttle between Preston and Carlisle. As Andy had explained earlier, for 6 days of the blockade, the West Coast main lines actually closed north of Carlisle as well, whilst Network Rail carry out engineering work near Kingmore Yard. And so trains coming down from Glasgow will reverse at Lockerbie, resulting in the need for a replacement bus service between Carlisle and Lockerbie. This is all going to take a serious communication exercise. Andy Mellors again.
And what you've seen today is a really good example of the cross-industry collaboration between operators, not just those operators that are directly affected by the closure of the West Coast Main Line, ourselves, TransPennine and Northern, but also other operators that will be able to support the flow of customers elsewhere. So ScotRail, LNER, CrossCountry, all really important as part of the overall proposition. We'll be bidding these amended train services in the next couple of weeks, which is in line with the recognised industry process. That will mean that these trains start to appear in journey planners and customers can buy tickets from 12 weeks before the date of traveller. So we'll keep up with informed traveller. But also the wider communication message is going to be really, really important. These Settle and Carlisle diversions, are really appropriate for customers that are travelling from the likes of Wigan and Preston to Scotland. But for customers that are travelling from the likes of Manchester, a trip across the Pennines and using the East Coast might be quicker and more appropriate. Similarly, customers travelling from London to Scotland, the East Coast Main Line is invariably going to be quicker, which is why it's so important that we have this level of industry cooperation and collaboration right from the outset, and we're really clear with those customer messages.
Soon we arrive at Carlisle, and our journey over England's highest railway line is complete. There will be some who point out this isn't really a diversionary route strategy, but a shuttle service during a blockade, with no guarantee that it will be done again. Well, there's some truth in that. But as Andy Mellors explained, the circumstances of this blockade are very specific. And if it were to happen again, the solution would need to be specific for whatever the circumstances were at the time. But for ages, people have been clamouring for Avanti West Coast to run services over the Settle and Carlisle line during periods of disruption. And now they're going to do it in January 2026. Bravo to them. To them and the entire industry, because this is a collective effort, make no mistake. They all deserve the plaudits. Let's hope that this plan, that is designed to keep customers on trains, is such a storming success that it becomes not only essential to repeat the exercise in future during planned disruption, but who knows, maybe even becomes part and parcel of standard operating procedure. Now, wouldn't that be a thing?